The wind screamed across the empty land, carrying dust and ash from mountains that had been silent for centuries. The sky was a dull red, hiding the sun behind thick clouds. Nothing lived here anymore. No birds, no animals, no sound of water. But in the middle of this dead land, there was one small figure moving carefully between the rocks. It was a girl. Her skin was marked by scars, her eyes sharp and alert like a wild animal. She wore clothes made from old metal sheets and torn fabric, stitched together with care. In her hand, she held a long spear, made from bone and steel she had scavenged long ago. This was Lyra. She was young, maybe 17 in human years, but life had made her old inside. She had learned to fight when other children had learned to sing. She had learned to hide when others had played. And now, she believed she was the last of her kind, the last Deathworlder. Her people had once been feared across the galaxy. They were born on a world so dangerous that even plants could kill. Giant beasts hunted in the forests, storms ripped mountains apart, and only the strongest survived. The Galactic Council had called them Deathworlders because they came from the most hostile planet ever known. But then the Council decided they were too dangerous. One by one, Deathworlder colonies were destroyed. Starships burned their cities. Soldiers hunted them across worlds. And now, as far as Lyra knew, she was the only one left. She had survived by hiding, by never trusting anyone, by never staying in one place too long. Today was no different. Lyra moved through the ruins of an old settlement, searching for anything she could use: scraps of metal, pieces of wire, maybe an old energy cell. She was hungry. The dried meat she had carried for days was almost finished. She needed food, water, and a safe place before nightfall. That was when she heard it, a sound that did not belong here, a low hum, mechanical, steady. Her heart jumped. She froze, listening carefully. Then she saw a shadow crossing the red clouds. Above, a ship. Not a council ship. Those had a sharp, deadly shape she had learned to fear. This one was different, smaller, older. Smoke drifted from one engine, like it was damaged. It was landing. Lyra's instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, but something inside her made her stay. She crouched low behind broken walls, spear ready, eyes locked on the landing site. The ship touched down on the cracked earth, throwing dust into the air. The ramp opened slowly with a hiss of steam. Figure walked out. Lyra held her breath. It was not a council soldier. It was not an alien. She knew it was strange. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face not hidden behind a mask. He wore a dark jacket, boots covered in dust, and carried a pack on his back. His hair was messy, his face tired, like someone who had been traveling for a long time. But most of all, he looked human. Lyra had heard whispers about humans. Some traders spoke of a planet called Earth, a place where life was as harsh as any death world. But she had never seen one. The man looked around carefully, scanning the horizon, then walked toward the ruins, toward her hiding place. Lyra's grip on the spear tightened. Was he dangerous? Was he here to hunt her? She stayed perfectly still as he moved closer. Her heart pounded in her chest. Finally, he stopped a few meters away. "I know you're there," he said calmly, his voice deep but not threatening. "I'm not here to hurt you." Lyra didn't move. "My name's Daniel," he continued, lowering his pack slowly. "I've got food, water, if you need some." Food. Her stomach twisted at the word. But she didn't lower the spear. Daniel didn't come closer. Instead, he opened his pack and placed a small box on the ground. Then he stepped back. The smell hit her: first warm, real food. Not dry roots or stringy meat, but something rich and fresh. Lyra's mouth watered. She hated that it tempted her. "Take it if you want," Daniel said softly. "I'll stay right here." For a long moment, Lyra didn't move. The wind howled around them. Finally, hunger won. She moved like lightning, grabbing the box with one hand, spear still ready in the other. She retreated a few steps before opening it. It was bread, soft, warm. She took a bite before she could stop herself. Daniel watched her carefully, but didn't move closer. "You've been alone a long time," he said quietly. Lyra froze mid-bite, staring at him. Because in his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. The same look she carried in her own. The look of someone who had survived too much. Someone like her. The fire crackled softly as the red sun began to sink behind the mountains. Lyra sat on one side, eating slowly, eyes never leaving the man across from her. Daniel. That was what he had called himself. He had brought her food, water, and even a small blanket from his pack. He had made no sudden moves, no threats, no tricks. But Lyra didn't trust him. She had lived too long to trust anyone easily. She had learned that kindness always came with a price. He sat calmly, poking the fire with a stick, his face unreadable. He looked like any traveler, dusty clothes, tired eyes, a few scars across his hands. But there was something strange about him, something that made her instincts stay sharp. He was too calm, too confident, like someone who had seen worse things than she could imagine. Lyra remembered the stories her people used to tell around the fire before the hunters came. Stories about dangerous humans from a world where even the ground could kill you. A death world, like her own home had been. But those were only stories, weren't they? She kept her spear close as she asked, voice low and cautious, "Why are you here?" Daniel glanced up, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, she felt like he was looking through her, like he could see all her fears, all her anger, all her loneliness. "My ship broke down," he said simply. "I was looking for supplies." She narrowed her eyes. "This planet is dead. There's nothing here." A small smile touched his lips, but it wasn't a happy smile. More like someone who knew too much about loss. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "the dead places hide things the living world has forgotten." Lyra didn't like that answer. He was hiding something. She could feel it, the way he moved, the way he kept scanning the horizon like he expected trouble. It wasn't normal. He was no simple traveler. "What are you?" she asked suddenly. Daniel didn't seem surprised by the question. He leaned back, staring at the red sky before answering. "Human," he said quietly. The word sent a strange shiver through her. Human. The stories she had heard came rushing back about Earth. A world full of storms, diseases, predators with teeth as long as your arm. A world where people grew strong because the planet itself tried to kill them every day. A world like hers. "You're lying," she said sharply, gripping her spear tighter. "Humans don't come here. The council keeps everyone away." His smile faded. He stared into the fire for a long moment before saying, "The council doesn't control everything." There was something in his voice, something hard, something dangerous. Lyra felt a chill run through her, despite the fire's warmth. This man was not afraid of the council. That made no sense. Everyone feared the council. She looked at him closely now. The scars on his hands. The way he sat with his back to a wall so no one could sneak up behind him. The way his eyes never stopped moving, like he expected an attack at any moment. This was a man who had lived through battles, many battles. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice calm but carrying weight. "Where I come from," he said, "we learned to survive anything. Storms, beasts, hunger, even war. My people call our world Earth, but the galaxy has another name for it." Lyra leaned forward without meaning to. "What name?" she asked. His eyes met hers, steady and cold. "Deathworld," he said softly. The word hit her like a THUNDERCLAP. Deathworld. Her heart pounded in her chest. For so long, she had believed she was the only one left, the last of the Deathworlders. But this man, this human, he came from a world just like hers, maybe worse. She didn't speak for a long time. Her mind was racing. If he was telling the truth, then she wasn't alone. Not completely, but another thought came, colder than the wind sweeping through the ruins. If the council found out there was another Deathworlder, they would come. They would never allow anyone like her, or him, to live. She looked at him carefully, her voice barely a whisper. If the council knows you're here, they'll hunt you. Daniel didn't look afraid. He just stared into the fire and said quietly, "They can try." And in his eyes, Lyra saw it clearly for the first time. He wasn't just a traveler. He was something much more dangerous. The night passed slowly, the fire burning low until only glowing embers remained. Lyra didn't sleep much. She sat with her back to the wall, spear across her lap, eyes fixed on the human. Daniel slept lightly, one hand always near the strange weapon at his side. Even in sleep, his body was tense, like someone used to waking up to danger. By the time the sun returned, painting the sky orange and gold, Lyra still wasn't sure what to think of him. He said he came from a death world, that he was like her, but she didn't know if she believed him. People lied to survive. She had learned that lesson too many times. When Daniel finally stood, stretching his arms and shaking the dust off his jacket, Lyra's spear tip shifted slightly toward him. He noticed. "You're quick," he said calmly, not moving closer. "Good, it keeps you alive." She didn't answer. Instead, she asked the question that had burned inside her all night. "Your world," she said slowly, "is it as dangerous as mine was?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "My world?" he said softly. "Every day, it tried to kill us. Storms tore apart whole towns. Forests hid creatures with claws like swords. The ground shook, the sky burned, the oceans rose. We didn't conquer our world, we just survived it." Lyra's chest tightened. That was exactly like her home, exactly like the death world that had made her people strong, and made the council fear them. "You're telling the truth," she whispered. Daniel didn't smile. "I don't have to lie about this." She studied him carefully now. His hands bore old scars, some deep, like he had fought beasts, machines, maybe even other men. His jacket was patched in too many places to count. The way he moved was quiet, efficient, like someone who had spent years staying alive in places where one mistake meant death. He was a Deathworlder. She felt it in her bones. For the first time in years, she was looking at someone who truly understood what it meant to fight every single day, just to keep breathing. But there was something else about him, something heavier, like he carried ghosts inside him. "You've killed," she said suddenly. Daniel didn't even flinch. "Yes. How many?" He looked out at the horizon for a long time before answering. "Enough to stay alive," he said finally. His voice was flat, but Lyra saw it, the flash of pain in his eyes. Whoever this man was, he had lived through things even she couldn't imagine. Before she could ask more, he turned and looked at the sky. "We need to move," he said sharply. Lyra frowned. "Why?" Daniel's eyes stayed on the horizon. "Because someone's coming, and it's not friendly." She felt a chill crawl up her spine. The hunters. She didn't even have to ask. She had lived too long in fear of those ships to mistake. The feeling in her gut. "They found you," she whispered. Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, they found us." Lyra gripped her spear tighter. She had spent years hiding, running, surviving alone. Now for the first time, she wasn't alone anymore, but that also meant for the first time she wasn't the only one in danger. Daniel looked at her with those sharp, steady eyes. "You've fought them before?" he asked. Lyra nodded once. "Yes." "Then you know what's coming," he said. She did. The hunters didn't leave survivors. Lyra felt the old fear rise inside her, the same fear she had carried since the day her people were slaughtered. But there was something different this time. This time, she wasn't facing it alone. Daniel checked the weapon on his belt, then met her eyes again. "You can hide," he said quietly, "or you can fight. Your choice." Lyra stared at him. He wasn't afraid. Not like the traitors who ran at the first sign of the hunters. Not like the refugees who begged for mercy. This man looked ready, like a predator waiting for prey. She realized then why the council feared Deathworlders so much. Because people like them didn't break. The sound of engines grew louder in the distance. The hunters were coming. Lyra tightened her grip on the spear, and for the first time in years, she felt something other than fear. She felt ready to fight. The sound came first. A low, distant hum that grew louder with each second. The ground beneath their feet trembled softly. Lyra felt her chest tighten. She had heard this sound before. Years ago, when her people were slaughtered. The hunters were coming. Daniel stood at the edge of the broken wall, his eyes scanning the horizon. The sunlight caught on something metal. Far away, a shape moving fast through the sky, then another behind it. Two hunter crafts, black and sharp like the claws of a predator. They found us, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel didn't look at her. No, he said calmly. They found me. But now you're in it too. There was no fear in his voice. That unsettled her even more than the ships. The hunters descended, their engines screaming as they cut through the clouds. Dust rose in thick waves as they circled the ruins. Lyra's hands shook on her spear, but she kept her face hard. She had run from them for years. This time, she WODN single quotes to Daniel turned to her. Do you know the old tunnels here? She nodded quickly. The ruins were built over ancient mining shafts. Her people used them once for shelter before the hunters drove them out. Good, Daniel said. Show me. Lyra hesitated. You want to hide? Daniel's eyes narrowed as he checked the weapon on his belt, a strange compact thing that didn't look like council tech. We're not hiding, he said coldly. We're setting a trap. A chill ran down her spine. He sounded like a man who had done this before. The hunters landed. Doors slid open with a metallic hiss. Figures in dark armor poured out, moving in perfect formation. Their helmets glowed faint blue, weapons raised. They didn't speak. The hunters never spoke. They just killed. Lyra led Daniel toward a broken section of wall, then into the tunnels below. The air grew damp and cold as they moved through narrow passages lit only by faint shafts of sunlight. Behind them, the hunters spread out through the ruins, scanning with their glowing visors, weapons humming with power. They'll follow. Lyra whispered. Daniel crouched near a collapsed column, his movements sharp and practiced. He pulled a small device from his pack, setting it near the entrance. What is that? She asked. Insurance, he said simply. Lyra didn't understand, but she didn't ask again. They moved deeper until they reached a wide chamber where the ceiling had collapsed long ago. Rubble covered the ground. Daniel stopped, scanning the walls and exits like he was reading a map only he could see. Then he looked at Lyra. When they come, he said softly, don't fight head on. Hit and vanish, make them nervous, make them hunt shadows. She stared at him. You've done this before. Daniel's eyes were cold. Too many times. The sound of boots echoed through the tunnels now. The hunters were inside. Lyra gripped her spear tight, feeling the old anger rising. For years, she had run from these murderers. For years, she had watched them burn her people's homes, chase them through the forests, kill anyone too slow to escape. Not this time. Daniel crouched low, his strange weapon ready. Wait for my signal, he whispered. The first hunter stepped into the chamber. He didn't get a chance to aim. Daniel's shot was silent, but deadly. A blue flash cut through the air, hitting the hunter in the chest. The armored figure collapsed before it even knew what hit it. The others froze for half a second, then the trap sprang. The device Daniel had left at the entrance exploded in a burst of light and smoke. The hunters stumbled, their visors flaring, systems confused. Now! Daniel shouted. Lyra moved like lightning, spear striking one hunter's leg before she vanished into the shadows. Another stumbled as Daniel's weapon fired again, precise. And cold. The hunters regrouped fast, but the tunnels worked against them. Narrow paths, broken walls, darkness everywhere. They were used to easy kills. Not this time, one by one. They fell to traps, to shadows, to two Deathworlders who refused to die. Finally, the last hunter fell silent. The tunnels smelled of smoke and dust. The ground was littered with broken armor. Lyra's chest heaved as she leaned on her spear. Daniel checked the tunnels carefully before lowering his weapon. "They'll send more," he said quietly. Lyra wiped blood from her cheek. "Then we keep running?" Daniel's eyes met hers. "No," he said coldly. "Then we make them afraid." And in that moment, Lyra realized something terrifying. The council thought they were hunters. But Daniel was a predator too. The tunnels were quiet now. Too quiet. Lyra leaned against the cold wall, breathing hard. Her arms ached from the fight, but her mind refused to rest. She kept listening for footsteps, for engines, for anything that meant more hunters were coming. Daniel stood near the fallen hunters, checking their weapons with calm, steady movements. His face didn't show fear, only focus. "They'll send more," he said finally, tossing aside a broken rifle. "A lot more," Lyra swallowed, her voice low. "Then we run." Daniel looked at her, his eyes sharp. "No, running won't stop them. We need something bigger." She frowned. "Bigger?" For the first time since they met, Daniel smiled. Small, dangerous smile. "I didn't crash here by accident," he said quietly. Those words hit her like a stone. She stared at him. "What do you mean?" Daniel didn't answer. He just picked up his pack and started walking toward the far end of the tunnels. His steps were quick, like he had already made his decision. Lyra followed, spear in hand, anger and curiosity battling inside her. "You knew the hunters would come?" "Yes," Daniel said calmly. "They've been after me for a long time. But I wasn't running when I came here. I was looking for something." Lyra blinked. "Looking for what?" They stepped out of the tunnels into the bright sunlight. Ahead, the land stretched out in endless red dust and broken hills. Daniel pointed toward the horizon where a jagged line of cliffs rose against the sky. "There," he said. "That's where it is." Lyra stared. "What's there?" Daniel's voice was quiet but steady. "The thing that can turn this war around." A chill ran down her spine. War. She had spent years just trying to survive, hiding like an animal. The thought of fighting back, really fighting, felt impossible. But Daniel spoke like a man who had already decided the hunters would bleed for every step they took. They traveled for hours across the wasteland, the sun beating down, the wind sharp and dry. Lyra kept stealing glances at him. He moved like a soldier, like someone who had lived too many lives on the edge of death. But there was something else about him, something heavier. Finally she asked, "What are you really, Daniel?" He didn't look at her when he answered. "Human," he said softly. "But not just that. I'm a survivor, like you. The council destroyed my colony years ago. Thought they killed us all." Lyra stopped walking. "They killed your people too?" Daniel nodded once. "Yeah, but some of us didn't stay dead." He kept walking. Lyra followed, her grip tight on the spear. Finally, they reached the cliffs. Hidden between jagged rocks was a narrow path leading down into a deep canyon. The wind whistled through the stone like a voice warning them to turn back. At the bottom, half buried in sand and stone, something huge slept beneath the earth. A ship, but not like any ship Lyra had ever seen. Its black surface was scarred with old battles, its massive engines silent. Strange markings ran along its hull, symbols Lyra didn't recognize. It looked ancient, powerful, dangerous. Daniel stopped at the edge of the canyon, his eyes locked on the sleeping giant below. "This," he said softly, "is the reason they fear us." Lyra's mouth went dry. She could feel it even from here. Power. Old and terrible. Like a predator waiting for the right moment to wake. Daniel started climbing down toward the ship. Lyra followed slowly, her heart pounding. She didn't understand everything yet, but she knew one thing, whatever that ship was. It wasn't just a way to run. It was a way to fight back. And for the first time since her world burned, Lyra felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The ancient ship loomed in silence, half buried under centuries of dust and rock. Its black metal reflected the dying sun like a warning to the whole galaxy. Lyra stood at the edge of the canyon, staring down at it. For a long moment, she couldn't move. This wasn't just a ship. It felt alive. Like it was waiting. Daniel moved. With purpose, his boots crunching on the stone as he walked toward the old ramp. He touched a panel near the entrance. The surface lit up with faint blue symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. This was built before the Council ever ruled the stars, he said quietly, when Deathworlders didn't just survive. We fought back. Lyra's heart pounded. You mean, my people built this? Daniel looked at her, eyes hard. Ours did, humans, your kind. All of us. Back then, the galaxy feared us for a reason. The ramp groaned as it lowered slowly, dust falling in clouds. Inside, the air was cold and still, like it hadn't been disturbed in ages. They stepped into the dark corridor. Strange lights flickered on one by one, as if recognizing Daniel's presence. This is impossible, Lyra whispered. Daniel glanced back at her. No, this is history the Council tried to bury. They moved deeper, until they reached the command deck. A giant screen lit up, showing maps of star systems, old battle routes, symbols of forgotten Deathworlder fleets. And then, a message appeared. It wasn't in words Lyra knew, but the meaning hit her anyway. The ship had records, images, voices, fragments of the past. She saw Deathworlders standing together, human soldiers, alien warriors like her own people, all fighting side by side. She saw fleets darkening the stars, battles shaking entire worlds, and then she saw the Council. As rulers, but as conquerors, the truth unfolded in pieces. The Council hadn't united the galaxy for peace like they claimed. They had destroyed the Deathworlders first, because Deathworlders were too strong, too independent, too hard to control. The Council hadn't feared their violence. They feared their freedom. Lyra felt her hands shake. Her people hadn't been monsters. They had been rebels, and the Council had erased them from history. Daniel stood with arms crossed, watching the screen flicker through old war footage. His face was carved from stone. They called us dangerous, he said softly, but the only danger was to their power. That's why they hunted us, why they burned your world, why they killed mine. Lyra's throat felt tight. For years, she had carried the shame of being born Deathworlder, believing her people were hated because they deserved it, but it had all been a lie. The hunters weren't here to protect the galaxy. They were here to finish what the Council started centuries ago. Why show me this? She whispered. Daniel turned to her slowly. Because you deserve to know the truth before the next part begins. Her eyes narrowed. Next part? He pointed at the screens where red symbols now flashed. Near the edge of the system. The hunters. Dozens this time. They were coming in full force. Lyra's chest tightened. We can't fight that many. Daniel didn't move. His voice was calm. This ship isn't just a relic, he said. It has weapons the Council banned long ago, weapons built for Deathworlders. He walked to the center console and placed his hand on a glowing panel. The ship came alive with a deep, rumbling hum, like a sleeping beast stretching after a long rest. We can fight, Daniel said coldly. And this time, we make them remember who we are. The lights inside the ship flared bright blue. The engines began to roar, and for the first time in centuries, a Deathworlder warship rose from the dirt to face the galaxy again. The ground shook as the ancient warship rose from the canyon. Dust and rocks tumbled down the cliffs. and the sky turned dark from the engine's roar. Lyra stood inside the command deck, gripping the edge of a console, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never seen anything like this. The ship wasn't just flying, it felt alive, like it had been waiting centuries for this moment. The walls hummed with power, lights flickered like veins carrying energy through a giant's body, and the air itself seemed to tremble. Daniel stood at the center, hands on the glowing controls, his face lit by the blue lights of the screens. Outside, the hunter's fleet closed in. Dozens of ships, black and sharp like a pack of wolves circling prey. But this time, the Deathworlders weren't prey. Lyra saw the hunters send warnings through open channels, demanding surrender. Their voices were cold, mechanical, confident. Daniel didn't answer. He pressed one command, and the warship spoke instead. A deep, rumbling sound rolled through the air, a voice from the past carried on metal and fire. It wasn't in any language Lyra knew, but the meaning was clear. A warning, one chance to leave. The hunters didn't listen. They never did. They opened fire. First, beams of red energy cut through the sky. Missiles screamed toward the canyon. The hunters were fast, precise, deadly, but the warship was faster. Shields flared to life, bright as stars. Missiles exploded harmlessly against the glowing barrier. Then the ship answered. Lyra felt the deck shake as massive cannons unfolded from the hull. They didn't fire beams like the Council's ships. They launched something heavier, dark spears of energy that cut through hunter crafts like paper. One shot, one kill. The hunters panicked, their perfect formation breaking apart. Lyra's eyes widened as the old warship moved like a predator, not a machine. It hunted them one by one, every strike precise, merciless, unstoppable. The hunters had always been the ones bringing fear. Now they were the ones running. Daniel stood silent at the controls, his face hard, eyes locked on the screens. He didn't look like a traveler anymore. He looked like what the Council had feared all along, what they had tried so hard to erase from history. A Deathworlder warrior. Ships exploded across the sky, fire and metal falling like rain. Some hunters tried to retreat. The warship didn't let them. It chased them beyond the planet's orbit, tearing through their fleet until only wreckage remained drifting among the stars. Lyra gripped the console tighter as the last hunter's ship vanished in fire. The silence that followed felt heavier than the battle itself. Daniel finally stepped back from the controls. The glow in his eyes softened, but there was no victory smile. He knew what this meant. "They'll send more," Lyra said quietly. "Yes," Daniel answered, "but now they'll think twice." She looked out at the burning sky. For so long, she had been the hunted, the one hiding, the one surviving day to day. Now the galaxy had seen what the Council wanted everyone to forget. The Deathworlders were back. Not as victims, as warriors, as survivors, as something the galaxy could no longer control. Lyra turned to Daniel. "What now?" He looked at the wreckage drifting beyond the clouds, then at the ancient warship glowing around them. "Now," he said softly, "we make them remember our name." The engines roared again as the warship turned toward the stars. For centuries, the galaxy believed the Deathworlders were gone. But tonight, under a burning sky, a legend was reborn, and this was only the beginning.